Good evening and welcome to the Selectmen's meeting of April 18th, 2024. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you for everybody showing up, and then on Zoom, it's a pleasure to see the interest. First is hearing act on application submitted by Cohen, Kinney, Valencia and Cook LLP, Once Upon a Table Incorporated, for change of officers, director, and operations of premises for annual on-premise 12 restaurant wine and malt license. Premises are located at 36 Main Street. You come on up.
Hello, everyone.
Let's introduce yourselves.
I am Abby Maloney, proprietor of Once Upon a Table, 36 Main Street in Stockbridge. And if you haven't been there yet, well, come see us. We're just starting our third season under my ownership. And this is my business partner,
Nixon's in San Bernardino.
Okay, and you're
I'm applying to.
changing?
No, well, he's already, that happened already, but
Okay.
we're extending service outside, outdoors.
Okay.
So in the pandemic, we had an automatic extension to serve outside, but that has been rescinded. So we need permission to be able to serve alcohol outdoors, moving forward.
Okay, how many tables do you have outside?
Four.
Four.
Or 20.
Yeah, and that's your private property, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not mine,
But
my landlord.
yeah.
Yes.
It
Gave permission.
goes
Yes,
with the
yes.
addition.
Yes.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Up to me.
Any questions from the public? Zoom or anything? I make a motion that we accept the application.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's easy. Yeah, that's that one. I'm gonna go to the BSO application for 14 one-day alcohol license for the shed.
Good evening, good to see everybody. John Stanton, Director of Venue and Event Services for the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And my colleague Aaron.
No, I'm Erin. Last year, I worked with John in the event services department.
So we did this last year for how many?
We did it for 3 last year.
And it went well, I take it?
It went very well. No issues, no complaints.
Okay. And so you're doing it for 14
That's right.
to the shed.
Yeah, so our popular artist series we have more artists coming this summer, which is great. We're very excited to have more popular concerts happening at Tanglewood this year. And we just wanted to continue on this successful pilot from last season, kind of see what it looks like on a more broad scale through all these popular artist concerts.
Any questions from the board?
I have a few. So why just popular artists versus the classical or more traditional programming, one or the other, but?
Yep. I think from a cultural standpoint with the classical concert crowd, this hasn't been anything that we have heard them really discuss wanting to see one way or the other. And just kind of keeping up with the tradition of the classical music. It's nothing we would like to attempt to interrupt at this point and keep everything with that status quo. When it comes to the popular concerts, other venues similar to Tanglewood, other areas of the country, it's common practice just to be able to have alcohol service at your seat, no matter where your seat is.
And on balance, do you feel that it reduced consumption of the BYOB, increased consumption, or had no net effect?
Certainly no net effect. In a way, it probably increased a little bit just because we were introducing it into an area that would not have otherwise been able to have it.
Right.
But there was no issue with control or any additional problems added to it.
Well, they're all tip certified, correct?
Everyone's tip certified.
They can cut off.
Yes,
They actually have a little more control and
you bet. And we did not have any service. Once the concert got underway and there was a good opportunity to break and cut it off, it didn't continue through the entire concert. And if there was an intermission, we would stop at intermission as well, just like the rest of the service areas on the grounds.
Any questions from the audience or Zoom? Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we approve the alcohol licenses for the 14 events.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, applications for 5 one-day entertainment
Oh, there's more.
licenses for extension hours.
Round two.
Okay, so let's go with a one-day entertainment license for a wedding on Saturday, September 7th at 12 p.m. to Sunday to September 8th at 1 a.m. So you want to go to 1. Request for extension of hours for silent disco. Lindy Cafe, what's a silent disco?
Silent disco is, if nobody's experienced one, they're actually pretty fun. You have a DJ that passes out headphones, and you could basically have 3-4 different songs happening at the same time, depending on which song you pick in your headphones, and you get to watch everybody dance. And they could all be dancing to different songs at the same time, and it's pretty hysterical to watch. But there's no amplified music. Everything is done inside the actual headphones of the guests.
Yeah. Any comment?
Yeah, I think we should talk about this one for just a second.
No, go ahead.
So I love the silent disco idea. Actually, I talked with that to Thad at Town Garden about that. You know, it is I think a good way to extend the hours without disrupting the neighborhood. It's a great idea. Is there some reason why that can't kick in at 11 o'clock rather than 11:30? Because it seems like you're looking at this 9/7 events go amplified music to 11 p.m. at Studio E. Where's Studio E? That's all in the Lindy Center, right?
That's all in the Lindy Center.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna just stop right there. On the Lindy Center, I'm an abutter to that parcel, so never mind.
Oh,
I'll leave it up to you guys.
Jamie?
I thought it was at the other side of the parcel.
Could it start earlier and still end at 12 as your normal events?
And which date are we talking about?
This is the September 7th. Yeah, I would not go to 1. I would keep, we have extended, usually it's 11. We have extended to midnight. And that's as far as I think we should go on any of these boards. And with this one, it's a little different because usually we take 11 o'clock, the music gets died down. The last hour winds down to midnight. So I'll make a motion that we set this to 12 o'clock.
Mhm.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Those there?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we just change to 12. A one-day entertainment license for a wedding on Saturday, May 25th, 2024, from 12 p.m. to Sunday, May 26th, 2024 to 12 a.m. Request for extension of hours for amplified music at the Cinti Cafe in the Lindy Center. So I would say the same thing. Music kind of dies down a little bit at 11. I know you guys are all a little nowhere, but
Yep.
in sort of midnight.
Is that a 12-hour event? That one is at Cindy's Cafe. That's also in the Lindy, right?
That's right.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been up since 5.
I'll make a motion, we set this one to 12 a.m.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. One-day entertainment license to Tanglewood Festival Course celebration from Saturday, August 24th, 2024, from 10 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Request for extension in hours for amplification music in the tent club. You can,
Is that one on the shed side or on the,
It's closer to the shed side, yes.
wait, you know which parcel it's in?
It is not on the Lindy Center property.
Okay. Oh, I'm back.
It is between the shed and Highwood.
All right.
and I would make the most the same thing, 11 o'clock kind of die down, 11:30 is fine.
Yeah.
Patrick, anything?
No.
Second,
Okay,
all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Good.
A one-day entertainment license for a wedding on Saturday, September 7th, 2024, from 12 PM to 11:30 PM. Request for extension of hours for amplified music in the Cindy's Cafe at the Linden Center, to the route.
All right.
From to 11:30 PM. And I propose we approve this with the restrictions of the owners.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. One-day payment license for a wedding at Thursday, September 19th, 2024, from 12 PM to Friday, September 20th, 2024, to 12 AM. Request for sensitive hours for amplified music at this Lindy Center. I'll make a motion, we approve it with the same restrictions, 11 kind of diet down and then. Okay,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay. I think that's all of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chuck,
Yeah,
it's Anita Schwerner. I'm just curious. The town regulation is that these events should end at 11 o'clock. Is that correct?
that's just
It's just been your standard
it's
procedure.
been our standard procedure, 11. We've been extending them to 11:30 to 12 with that the music just dies down to a really low unwinding downtime.
I'm sorry, but regular Tanglewood concerts end, I believe, at 10 o'clock. Is that correct?
11-ish.
It's at 11ish, sir?
Yeah, their concerts end about 11-ish. Somewhere
It
in there.
seems to me that it's 10 o'clock, but either way, 11 o'clock is like late enough. This is a residential area, so even if the event ends at 11, you still have the traffic and the people leaving. That one wedding is over 250 people. I don't understand why you're doing all these, granting all these extensions. And then what about when Namke asks for the same thing and Botanical Gardens? It seems like you're setting an example here.
This has been set for the last few years, actually. So we're just going by, standard protocol for the last couple of years. We've been, quite a few years, actually, we've been doing this.
So should the bylaw be changed?
I don't believe it's a
The bylaw
bylaw.
doesn't limit.
No, it's not a bylaw.
What is it?
It was just, yeah, standard operating procedures from the past, but no, we've been doing this for the last couple of years. We haven't really any issues, no complaints with the traffic or anything. That's why we cut the 2 o'clock down to the midnight, because 2 o'clock is excessive, 2 AM. But we have, it's just been going pretty good for any event that went past. Chesterwood does it, Rock Museum does it. So it's our standard procedure that we've been doing the last few years, and it's been working.
Yeah, I just would add that there's relatively few of these events a year at these venues. I'm smiling at someone in the audience. And to be competitive, it's often these are highly competitive. Weddings are some of the largest, sources of ancillary revenue. And I think that that if we're going to allow folks to run a few of these events a year, that it helps folks get the business. And, I frankly think that, allowing people to celebrate their wedding a little half an hour later. As someone who lives in the neighborhood, I would certainly be okay with that. I hope they have a wonderful day.
That's very kind of you. I was just curious. I don't live that close, but I can still hear the sounds coming from Tanglewood. So, and more so late at night and the traffic. So I was just curious why it's being extended so late. But I thank you for your explanation, and if you're okay with it.
Okay, thank you, and you're welcome.
Candace.
Thanks, Chucky.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Candace Curry, and I live right near the Lindy Center. And John has been really wonderful in working with some of the neighbors to talk about what they want to do. And we totally support Tanglewood and what you've just voted on. So thank you very much to John and the Select Board.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Candace.
Okay, you're good.
Thank you very much.
Have a good season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, presentation of the housing production plan.
Hi.
Hello.
Jan Ackerman, and I wanted to just do a brief presentation, maybe 10 minutes, to introduce you to the housing production plan. I know that you've had the actual draft of it for several weeks, so hopefully you have a chance to take a look at it. And it's available on the town website for anyone in the audience who wants to take a look at it. So maybe we could start, Michael, if you could up the presentation. And I know a couple of you have seen this, so, but I wanted to make sure that Chuck and Jamie had the opportunity to go through a quick summary of it. So we're sharing the screen behind you for those of you in the audience. You can go to the first one, Michael. The housing production plan, the Affordable Housing Trust has spent quite a bit of time over the past 9 months to a year developing the housing production plan for the town. And with the counsel and advice of our consultant, Karen Sunderberg, who's with us tonight and can help comment on it. So the purpose of the housing production plan is really to understand local data about what's happening with housing, and then to identify what some of the needs and priorities are for housing in the Stockbridge area, to further identify what some of the strategies would be that we'd want to use to address those needs and priorities, and then to create a 5-year plan for housing. And this plan is not, at this point, a specific, this is a project, this is another project and whatever. It's really laying out what are the objectives in terms of creating additional housing over the next 5 years. The process that we've used has been to a number of interactions with the community. We, in July, had a community housing workshop. In fact, I think some of you were there for that. And we had quite a good attendance at that, a lot of input, and we've tried to feed that input into this housing production plan that we've developed. We also had, during the summer, a community housing survey where we had 77, I think, responses to that, which is a good amount of responses. We've also tried to build those responses and the priorities, the things that were positive and negative, into this housing plan. We've had monthly Stockbridge Affordable Housing Trust meetings. Many of those meetings have included a discussion of the housing production plan. And then at the end of March, on the 28th of March, we had a community housing forum where we presented the draft housing production plan to the community and got feedback from the community about what they saw as things that were positive or they'd like to see changed. So we haven't yet, in this draft, we haven't yet folded those things in, but we can talk about what some of those things were. We met on Tuesday with the planning board and had a discussion of all of this and got a little bit of feedback from them. And then we are here tonight to go over it with you. So just to give you a quick summary of what we learned when we did the needs assessment, we have 1,638 homes, 80 in Stockbridge, 80% of which were built before 1980. And I want to say in the range of 40% were built before World War II. So we have quite a number of kind of historic houses or older houses in town. We have 811 full-time resident homes. So the difference would be for part-time or second homeowners primarily. And then we also know that we all know that we exceed the state 10% affordable housing threshold that they're hoping for. We're at 10.47 most recently. And those three areas of affordable housing, as I'm sure you know, are Pine Woods, Heaton Court, and Riverbrook. The key trends that we found in the community, in the needs assessment, was that our resident population has declined. And I want to say just in the last decade, it has declined about 120 from 1947 to 1827, which is about a 6% decrease. But within that population, the age group that's between 35 and 54 was 504 10 years ago and is now 293. So that population has decreased over 40% in the last decade alone. We also know that the population who is here has a much higher median age than it did a decade ago. A decade ago, it was 41 was the median age. Now it's over 60. We also, surprisingly, I thought, have a decrease in the median family or median household income. So a decade ago, it was around 55,000. Now it's 46,000. And keep in mind, that's not adjusted for inflation. So if you take into account inflation, that's an even larger decline in the real income for residents. Now, we've seen an increase in poverty, obviously. And we have 21% of residents who have claimed a disability. So during this same decade or so that we were looking at, we have been seeing a very slow growth in housing, really only about 40 new units of housing over an entire decade. That's about 4 a year. We have very low vacancy rates, which indicates that it's a very tight housing market as well. And we have housing costs that for many are no longer affordable in Stockbridge. So we have 1 in 3 households who spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs, and 1 in 5 who spend more than 1 in 8 or 1 in 5 that spend more than 50% of their income. So it's a whether we like it or not, over the last decade, there have been significant changes in the community in Stockbridge on a number of fronts. So we should keep that in mind as we think about the housing production plan that we want to try to talk about today. So what came out of all of those community activities and the work we did on the needs assessment and so on was that we feel there is a need for both rental and homeownership units, that there is a need for resources to improve the housing stock. We had a number of people indicate that there were, in their home, there were a number of changes or renovations that would be helpful in terms of energy efficiency and or new roofs and things like that, that they really did not have the resources to do. And so if we can identify some funding sources from state or federal programs that would allow us to make those funds available, that would be a very positive thing in the community. And we also saw a need for greater handicap and accessibility and services. If we look at the housing production goals, they're under the state provisions. If we do a 5-year plan, what they are looking for in terms of a goal would be 0.5% of the year-round housing. That works out to be about 5 per year for Stockbridge. So the plan that we are proposing here is to have an increase in of about 25 units over the next 5 years. And I just want to point out that that 25 units, if you assume, well, first of all, it's about a little over 1%, maybe 1.5% of the total number of homes. So it's not a huge expansion in the number of homes that would be in Stockbridge. Two, if you assume that most of those homes would be for people who were in the 35 to 54 age group, and we don't know that, but I'm just want to point out that if they are, and we had about 3 residents per home in those, it would do less than 1/3. We would get back less than 1/3 of the number of people in that age bracket that have gone away in the last decade. So not a huge increase in that. We also see that there is a need to address a wide range of housing income over time. So the housing strategies that we're looking at really, and these are spelled out in the guidelines from the state. You look at capacity building strategies. What we're talking about doing there is conduct ongoing community outreach and education throughout this next time period over the next several years. And I would also indicate that if there are any projects that we want to pursue, which I hope we will, we would be continuing to have ongoing interactions with the community throughout the project development. We also want to try to capitalize the Affordable Housing Trust. And what that means is identifying some sources of funds that would enable us to do some housing development that we're talking about, the 25 units. In terms of zoning strategies, I will just say at the beginning, we're not really envisioning that there'd be any significant zoning need for zoning changes in most of this. There's been a lot of discussion about ADUs, both in the community meetings and in our meeting a week or so ago and even in the planning board, there was a little bit of discussion about ADUs. So I think the sense of the community has been that they would like to see some ADUs. I know there's been a lot of discussion around all of that. And we also know that the state is coming forward with their own guidelines. So we're the same, basically, we should wait to see what the state does and then probably more the planning board than the Affordable Housing Trust might be involved in looking at what restrictions or what things to do around that for the state guidelines. We also want to identify or hope we can identify modest opportunities where we could have a wider range of housing choices in specific areas. And we don't know exactly what that means yet. But that's one of the things that came back in terms of from the community of wanting to identify some way of having kind of maybe 1 or 2 cluster areas or whatever. And then thirdly, to promote multifamily and mixed use development. And there was a lot of interest in converting transferring single family residences into 2-family residences. And there are a lot of economic reasons why that would be beneficial for some homeowners who could afford to buy a house if they were able to renovate it into a 2-family house where they would have income. Yeah. So the development and preservation strategies, what we'd probably do is partner with a developer on privately owned properties. We don't have any specifically in mind. We all know there is the Morris property that has been donated. We don't know yet whether that is even buildable at this point, but that one is a possibility if it turns out to be buildable. There may be others over the next few years that come forward. We'd like to also, and I'm not sure there is any of this at the moment, but if there is public property that turns up in the next 5 years that would be suitable for affordable housing, we'd like to at least consider that and have the board consider it. And then we also want to establish, as I said before, the housing preservation initiatives so that people in town can do the repairs and renovations that are needed on their homes. So that's my quick summary. The housing production plan, as it is currently drafted, does not have specific projects. That'll be coming in the future. But the whole idea is really to look at adding 25 units over the next 5 years. So I would invite any questions or comments or feedback you would like to share with us.
So on page 40, you list 4 places. You have Heaton Court, Stockbridge House, Pine Woods, and DDS Group Home, which must be Riverbrook. Stockbridge House, I don't know what that is.
I think that's part of Heaton Court.
Stockbridge Housing Authority, it says?
Nope, Stockbridge House,
That might be.
8.
Yeah, I think it's
That's the house in the back.
it's part of Heaton
Tables.
Court.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's the group home.
In the back, yeah,
Oh, okay.
I believe so.
And page 22, mobile homes. Where are these mobile homes?
I don't know.
Is that the census data?
No, it's on page 19 of your report. It said we had 19 mobile homes.
Well, let me. Sometimes the census data includes mobile homes when there really aren't mobile homes, and assessor's data says 0. Usually we point that out.
Bullet point 5.
What?
Loss of mobile homes, but where were these 19 mobile homes?
My page numbers are different than yours, so it's it's supposed to be. If there were trying to find the place that you're referring to, 21 clients.
Well, I think what we
The census estimates show a loss of 19 mobile homes down to 0 units, but it does say down to 0 units.
I know, but I've never seen mobile homes in Stockbridge.
You know, the census isn't 100% reliable, and you see this in other communities too, where the census includes some number of mobile homes and there weren't any, or they were, there are different numbers. Mobile home stuff, because also there's such small numbers typically, you often see inaccuracies.
So
there's not anymore.
Page 52, it mentions transportation. We also have our micro transit, which we've had in Stockbridge for 2 years. You just do the BRTA, so that is not also page 58. It talks about, and I know right now it's sort of in the air, but we had talked about the transfer tax because it's an unknown, but it's still an unknown.
Yeah, it hasn't been passed yet.
Right, but it's in here.
Oh, yeah. We mentioned the Affordable Homes Act several times because there's potential of bringing in some additional resources to the town as well as.
And then page 57, bullet point 4. It doesn't have any, it just says the event was held on, there's a blank in Lenox, Massachusetts.
Oh, because at that point when we drafted, we hadn't scheduled it, so we filled it in since then, the actual date.
Is this the community forum?
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
so it was on March 28th, and we'll make sure that's.
Yeah, I've already included that in the revised draft, yeah.
That's all I have. What about Chuck?
This is a few just points. Saying we're averaging 4 houses per year. local town.
Five.
No,
I know, but in the paper it says five.
so if they want to build 5 per year for the next 5 years or 25 units.
That's the minimum to submit a plan. You can't have a plan with less than 5 per year for 5 years. So, you know, it's aspirational. There's no policy that comes out of this.
Okay, just a few comments, like on the 30 to 50-year-olds. Some of it is the housing, but the majority of it is, good paying jobs that we have to work on. Entertainment, nightlife, just people, they move away not because of housing, but they move away because we don't have what they want here so that's something, that kind of coincide.
Yeah, it's
And-
something which doing one without the other doesn't work. It has to be a kind of.
Yeah, so, and, a lot of this stuff is great, but our zoning, 2-4 acre zoning and stuff, to put affordable housing in a 4-acre lot, it's not gonna work.
Right.
It's not even just that. You've got frontage requirements. You've got
So it's,
a lot of different.
it's a very uphill battle, I believe. Unless we look at our zoning and our stuff like that to accommodate this. For right now, I don't have much more than that. That's right now.
Oh, on page 44, first bullet point, it said, the high real estate prices in Stockbridge, it's everywhere, it's nationwide. But I know this is for Stockbridge, but I just want to point out, like, we are not unique and we are not alone and we've not done something terribly wrong. It's like, it's everywhere.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
So. These are relatively modest changes. I'd like to make what? Are we not done? Oh.
I'm sorry, can the public speak after
Go ahead.
you're done? Or during?
I'm okay, go ahead, Chuck.
Okay. You have some up, state your name.
Sure. I don't know if Jen's.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jackie Harris. I live on Glendale Middle Road. And I think it's incredible that the town of Stockbridge has this housing promotion plan. I used to work for the New York City Planning Department for 38 years, so I do have some interest in planning. And I have come to several of the meetings. For the sake of time, I'm just asked that if the select people, I'm just gonna call you people because I know there's a warrant to change that title. But if you have an opportunity, I think it would be so great, to listen to a lot of the commentary that's been made. Basically, at least since my neighbors and I have been very involved with the review from November on, because even though I think the table, executive summary, et cetera, provide sort of a broad brushed approach to the housing, there have been many details, that we've actually talked about more in our conversations. For example, there's reference in the plan, I think, to a sewer plan that should help guide development in the town of Stockbridge. That won't be ready for 2 weeks. And then we'll see what it says and that kind of thing. I think that there have been some representations that the plan is aspirational, but in my belief, the plan does actually more than it's more than aspirational. It's a plan to help the town of Stockbridge address some of the critical needs that, we're talking about, not only in this town, but, in the country. I think some of the concerns that we've raised over and over again, and I just really want to shout out Housing Trust and Planning and all the other committees that have, I think really deeply reviewed this plan and have some very thoughtful reflection on how to provide information to the town, for example, which is top notch. Michael has also been very helpful in terms of following up on questions that, I have in particular. But I do think that neighborhood character is a very big issue for this town, particularly given the small town nature. I mean, it's a great place to live. I think that's something that the town should really be sensitive to. I think there's a section 40B that allows towns that have not, well, towns that have met its affordable housing requirement or goal, which this town has. It starts to, with that section may, well, a little bit confused about section because on one hand, it provides greater efficiency in terms of land use review, which is great. On the other hand, I'm not sure that the input from so many of you would be as strong. So I would ask that you kind of look at that section because the one thing I think that's so great about this town is that you can come to a meeting, you can talk to the decision makers and hopefully sway, you know, some of your thoughts in terms of what you might think the town might need or get tremendous, you know, get more neighborhood input. So I think that issue was brought up last night or maybe 2 nights ago at the planning meeting as well. You know, conservation committee, planning board, some of the committees that have been put into place in order to make review more sensitive or more local. You know, I'm just really concerned how that all works out in the process of reviewing development proposals as they come forward. I think density is an issue. I think housing typology is an issue. You know, we talk a lot about affordable housing, and I worked on affordable housing my entire career. And I think there are many different types, prototypes of affordable housing. I think the town should be sensitive, you know, to that. Housing character is very important. You know, there's a lot of single family homes here. Once you start introducing mixtures of housing typology, I think you need to at least look at it. I think that the donated property that is on, it's frontage on Glendale Middle Road, that's sort of mentioned tangentially in the plan because we don't have a proposal for that yet. But I think that maybe some sensitivity should be given to large parcels in all of Stockbridge that might be used for housing, specifically as it relates to the need for infrastructure, sewer, water, et cetera. So there are costs involved with providing affordable housing. And I think you just kind of mentioned that, you know, as well. So that's something I think the town should be looking at because at what point will the funding that's required to either write down the cost of a mortgage associated with a home ownership prototype as opposed to some of the other programs that might provide greater federal flexibility or federal funds. I think that's something that at least should be an appendix to the plan in terms of, and I have to say that I think your consultant and your committee have listened very carefully and have actually made some changes to the plan. The problem with one of my sort of questions is how do we review that before you take action on it? Because as I understand, there is an aggressive time frame here to adopt this plan. And I think there may be some questions that might be outstanding that you might want to have some answers to before you adopt it. And I understand the need, you know, to move it expeditiously. But at the same time, I don't know how those modifications will be made and what the time frame is for those modifications so that there could be serious deliberation on your part to adopt basically a policy document that lays out what this town's vision is for housing. We talk about publicly owned property. There's no map that talks, you know, that really shows it. But I know there are references in the plan to some of the publicly owned properties here in town. But someone mentioned to me, and people are in my neighborhood just kind of come up to me and talk to me about things. So they said there may be, like the fire station or something may be moving to a different site. You know, I would ask that if you are aware of sites that have potential for development, they be considered in some way in this plan, because that might provide a greater opportunity to provide affordable housing in an area, specifically the fire station, for example, that has sidewalks, has access to the playground, town offices, that kind of thing, or any type of other services that might be required. So anyway, like I said, I don't really want to take up a lot of your time. You have a long agenda.
Thank you.
You know, this committee has been amazing considering it's only 2 years old. You know, I guess when we find out more about, there is an engineering report associated with the donated property. We should be getting that result in 2 weeks, I believe. So I'm sure you'll be seeing me again, as well as a lot of the other neighbors who have come here to talk specifically about that. And I also want to give a shout out to the chair, because I remember when the cell phone tower and the solar farm was developed, there was a site visit that he and others on the select board participated in. And I would welcome anyone to come out and walk at least that, you know, walk through that parcel a little bit so we can get a sort of a firsthand feel of site conditions, et cetera. So thanks so much for listening. Appreciate it.
You.
Hi, Kate Fletcher. I'm on the planning board, and we met this Tuesday. We had a really good meeting, and I asked a number of questions, and I'm looking forward to, I know Jan always gets back to me really quickly, so I'm looking forward to hearing back from Jan. And I think, you know, I don't really see, Jackie referenced that there's some urgency here. I don't see that. I think we should take our time with this and make sure everybody feels like they have the information before we move ahead with it. So one comment that I also had wanted to make on Tuesday, but we were covering a lot of ground, was that I had a really good conversation with Mike Canales. And speaking of fire, he mentioned, you know, one really, you know, clear need is emergency medical services. And he has a great idea to use the old firehouse in Interlaken, as well as the firehouse in the old firehouse in Glendale, for, you know, a potential situation where there's housing for these needed EMS workers. That seems to me like it should be a great priority to focus on. And can I just finish, please? And I hope that you will, you know, work with Michael on that. Thank you.
Can I get a couple of clarifications on Tuesday's meeting? You asked a question about Elm Court to Randy, who could not be here today because she had to be at the hospital in Boston. I called Matt, the building inspector, and no permits have been pulled on any of the permitted Elm Court project. It's actually basically on hold. It's my understanding that they're looking at some alternatives in terms of, in the past year, the single family homes around here aren't selling so well, but condos are selling more robustly. So I have no idea. I haven't talked to the developer, but I did talk to Matt, and there's no indication that there's been any activity on.
Randy mentioned that to me after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you seem to imply during the meeting that you seem to imply that the residential inclusionary bylaw had somehow scuttled some wonderful development. I just want to point out that there's been no activity.
You know, I think that a 2.6 million, upwards of 2.6 million requirement paid into whatever project is going to factor into what they can do.
Okay, that's, you know, that's not part of this topic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Anybody?
Patty.
Patty?
Hi, this is Patty Kea, and like Jackie, the previous speaker before Kate, I've also attended a lot of these meetings on the housing production plan. And first, I'd really like to thank Chuck and Jamie for going through the document page by page, number by number. I think it's important that the town board members understand the specificity of the document. So your attention to detail is deeply appreciated. That's something that also Kate Fletcher did at this week's planning board meeting. So again, thank you. I have two comments, and one, I've been the beating drum on the ADUs. As previous people have said, there is a lot of community support for ADUs. And it's also been said that we all know that state guidelines are coming. So my comment again is why is a sort of a question, is why we continue to include in this document specifically outlining details of a previous proposed bylaw for the ADUs that was proposed last year, and it was sent back from the planning board to the select board and then voted down at the select board that it needs more work. And yet the specific details of it are contained in this document, including the prohibition that part-time residents can't build them. So I guess it seems like such a glaring oversight, given all the things that we've all heard board members and Affordable Housing Trust members say over and over again, that we know that state guidelines are coming. So why include those specific details? Why continue to include them when we know there are problems with them? And my second comment is just sort of an observation that there's talk of cluster housing, which seems probably appropriate for this type of community. But there's also talk of upzoning, of turning single family zoning into multi-family by right. And I read the specificity of the square footage requirements. And I would actually invite those of you who are involved in this process going forward, members of the planning board, members of the select board, members of the Affordable Housing Trust, to really take a look in real life of what that looks like on single family lots that are then turned into multis. Those of us who live in what I'm calling MBTA communities now, we have an influx of this kind of zoning transformation taking place every day in our neighborhoods. And I would invite you to come. I will give you a tour of my town, for example, where every single family that gets torn down gets turned into at least a two, an attached two, a townhouse two. And I know that we don't have the space, the luxury of the space that Stockbridge has, but it really is a very different feel of a larger structure taking up a smaller lot, setback requirement. I mean, I've really dug into this on both sides of the state now. So all I'm asking you is that when you take those sorts of considerations, and I know that this document contains a wide range of considerations, I would really encourage you and invite you to take a look at those sorts of minor, what seems like minor when you see it on the page, zoning transformations, and take a look at it in real life so that you're familiar with it when you're standing in front of it, not just in a, photos in a PowerPoint presentation. I would invite you, those of you who have the luxury of living in Stockbridge full time, it's your viewport changes a lot when you have both viewpoints, when you come into this rural, beautiful, spacious community, and then you go home on Monday to kind of a different world. And I really think the contrast is useful context. And I think context is going to be particularly important with these sort of initiatives. So I just really thank you for your time. And I hope that you are always taking in a lot of context as these changes are proposed.
Okay, thank you. John?
Thanks.
Yep.
Hi, I'm John Hart. I live on Rattlesnake Mountain. And I've been banging on this can for a while because I really am curious. An old friend of mine who's in the 10th Mountain Division in World War II has a house, had a house, he passed away, up on Route 7, last house on the right before you go over the town line into Lee. It's abandoned. The last I knew, it was owned by the town because of back taxes not being paid on it.
I believe so. No, it's not.
It's not?
No.
And what about the gun property down on 102?
No.
The taxes been paid on it?
No. So there were a number of properties that the town had put into tax title over the last 20-something years. In 2021, myself and Eric Olson began the process of what's called tax title takings. Prior to that, we had just put a lien on the properties, but we never went to tax title. All those properties right now are in foreclosure. But due to the backlog of court cases and the rest, we're just waiting for those to get cleared up. Then they will become tax possession, which then the owner would have 1 year after tax possession to reclaim the property. And then after that, the town can do what it wants with it. So,
Really?
yes.
Yeah, sure.
So until 2021, we never filed for tax possession.
Yeah, no, I think that there are more properties than just that one.
There are.
I don't know where they are, but I know those two.
Yes.
And I know that the town is mowing the grass at the gun property, so I kind of assumed that it was owned by the town, but.
Every so often we do on some of the properties, basically a cleanup just to keep it. You lean the costs against the property, whether we're ever going to get anything, we'll see.
Well, somebody ought to do something for President properties, and that it actually hasn't fallen completely apart yet, but give it a couple more years, it will. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
I have just a couple of observations. Okay, is that right? First observation is this, there's been some, just sometimes jargon gets lost if you're not immersed in this, and people have talked about 40B. So 40B is if you've met your 10% of affordable housing goal within a town, then 40B is a friendly 40B versus an adverse or adversarial 40B if you haven't. Stockbridge has met the 10%. So any 40B development has to be approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So every exemption that a developer would, or whoever was going to build would have to put before the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a ruling on every one of those. So if there was a frontage question or a density question or whatever, I have every confidence in Jim and John and Miles and Patty and Catherine and all the other members of that board, in terms of it's one of the best boards we have. And so when we think about permitting authorities, this board is not going to be a permitting authority on a 40B development in Stockbridge. Neither will the planning board. It will be the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's the law. And that's good because that gives us yet another opportunity for input. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point I'd like to make is that in some of the discussions, there's been a question of, well, we're already at our 10%. All right. We were at our 10% the day the town voted to create the Affordable Housing Trust. We were. That was factored into the decision, and it was like a 10-to-1 decision at town meeting. We were at our 10% when the town voted to fund it. The first year was CPC, and the second year. Now, and when they voted to pass the residential inclusionary bylaw, which basically says if you're going to build a whole bunch of luxury developments, you can pay, in this case, around 2% of the sales cost into a fund to offset, to mitigate for the impacts you're having on the distortion of the real estate market. All right. So these are all discussions we've had. Our job as boards is to implement the law as promulgated at town meeting. Our job is not to debate the merits of the law or any other thing. So a year ago, when I was chair, we funded this housing production plan as a way to have a public process, to have a general overview of where we as a town want to go as we implement the will of town meeting. All right. We've gone through, I have also read the plan, by the way, because I was on all the meetings where it was drafted, and I think there's probably 12 of those, 14 of those of the past year, and dozens of hours. And we had a couple of special meetings where I believe between Zoom and participants, with all the meetings, we had nearly 100 in the surveys, or even over 100 participants in those meetings. So this is about helping us flesh out the direction we got at town meeting to implement the law. And I agree, though, with all of the speakers. We are in no hurry to approve this. I think we should take our time and look at another draft and make sure this reflects what, as an implementation guideline, we should put in place. So thank you.
Okay. That takes care of that. Paving concerns. We got paving the roads. Any comments?
I'm Alan Wilkin. I live at 3 Old Meeting House Road. And I'm here to ask the selectmen to reconsider plans to asphalt pave our road. All 3 of you know the roads I'm speaking about. Jamie, it's in your neighborhood and you've many years walked up our road. Your daughter's cross-country runners on our road. Chuck, I'm sure you've driven up our road many times in the fire engine. And I first of all want to thank you for your time to allow me to speak and address this concern of mine. I apologize for not having been more involved as the process evolved and the decisions were made to pave this road. I apologize for that. I'll try not to neglect participation in the future. I'll be brief, but I speak on behalf of 9 individuals who live on this road. It's an old historic road, old meeting house. It includes the section, I think you know, as you come up North Church Street, the road forks, bends up around the hairpin, up the steep hill. There are 9 people who abut that road. I've spoken or have input from just about everyone. First on the list, Dave Rosenthal. He lives in Martha Sauer's old house, and he'd rather see the money spent on speed bumps. He puts a sign out asking people to slow down. This next section of land, I looked for the deeds. I'm not sure actually who owns it. It may be that it was never deeded, in which case it may be the Stockbridge Muncies. Next up on the road is the Laurel Hill Field Arboretum. It's the site of the 2nd Old Meeting House, hence the name of the road, Old Meeting House. It's a historic road. There's the Field Arboretum. I served on Laurel Hill for several years, and it's not a section of road that I believe Laurel Hill would like to see asphalt paved. Currently, it's a involved tar and stone over gravel. Next up on the road is Sandra Newman, founder of CATA. She's adamant to not have the road be paved, feeling the historic character would be compromised. Sandy may be here on Zoom tonight. She said she'd try to come. Next property is Oronoque, the backside, and I've spoken to residents there who feel that asphalt paving of this historic road would be detrimental to the amount of traffic and the speed. Next house around the corner used to be Jack Fitzpatrick's, now owned by Osso, but many years ago, Jack himself objected to when Clint Snyder put tar and oil down. My daughter Hannah wrote a letter objecting to from gravel to tar and stone. Jack would not be happy to see that road paved. He loved it. Next down on the hill is a banker from Boston who's concerned about drainage. I think the town can address his issues. They don't need an outside contractor putting asphalt down on the road. My objection, since I'm the next on the road, is I've lived there 40 years. I've seen Clint Snyder do a great job taking care of that road. It went from gravel to some tar with stone, the chip seal that Hugh advocates. I agree with the chip seal, as your document states, but don't put the chip seal over compacted asphalt. It just makes it it ruins the character of the road, and I don't think it will do anything to improve the maintenance. Last on the road is Dr. Plakin, who'd be here to object, but I think he's vacationing in Marrakesh, riding his bicycle. But unanimous of the 8 people on the road would like not to see it paved. The asphalt will be a state spec where they lay down, I've spoken to the guys who do it, they lay down 3 to 4 inches of loose asphalt. They then compact it with 10-ton vibratory rollers to make a solid surface. And on top of that, they're going to put some chip seal and gravel. Why put the asphalt? Just put the chip seal and gravel on the places it's needed. Your pictures, Hugh, show a great description of the chip seal. And I agree, there's sections of the roads you propose that would benefit from the asphalt, but not the entire project. The section of Old Meeting House Clint Snyder has cared for the 40 years I've lived here. There's never been maintenance problems. I think putting the chip seal would be a good idea, but the asphalt is not going to do anything to improve the situation. It'll increase the amount of speed people use, and that hairpin is an accident to happen if you pave that road. So I ask the selectmen to make a motion to exempt Old Meeting House and Field Road from being asphalt paved. It'll result in a savings of approximately $80,000 to the town. And I appeal to the selectmen to exempt this road from being asphalt paved. And I thank you for the time to speak.
We have comments on that?
Well, I think a couple things maybe need to be corrected, and you, if you'd like to come up.
I do Stockbridge Highway. First, let me say I'm sympathetic to speed. I think nobody in here can dispute that I probably live where the highest speed in Stockbridge occur. I don't think anybody can dispute that. If I can go out there and tear up the road, slow cars down, I would. If the DOT had that mindset that potholes, undulations, and hog cross for a way to control speed, the turnpike would look like a supercross. So, and it's, to understand what chip seal is, it's MC 3000. And what that is the same product that's in asphalt. What they do when they use it to do chip seal, they have a reduction of 15%, which is kerosene. That's how they apply it. So I ran them roads with the same entity, the salesman, the representative that put down that original chip seal, and I'm following his recommendations to shim it, top it, and reseal it. So, you know, this spec is 1.5 inches on that. It's not 10 inches. I don't know where the 10 inches came from.
Right. I think that's one of the main
4
things.
inches loose, compacted to 1.5 inches.
No.
Read the state spec.
That you're talking about something different than what we're applying.
So I think regardless, so we did hand out a form talking about what the thing is. Mainly this is to, and I think you had a very good analogy of what it is basically if you're going to paint your wall, before you go and paint the wall, if you have nicks, dents and everything else, you fill it in, you smooth it out, then you put the top coat over the top. Chip seal will make the road look like the current road that you have as far as the finished surface on the top. There won't be potholes and there won't be the alligator cracking that you see right now, which is evidence of a road that is starting to come apart. So what it is that by putting 1.5 inch top coat over, you seal up your base, and then after it's called gas off, right?
Yeah, off gas.
Off gas. Once the road off gas is, then you come back and you put the chip seal over. Pictures there that show what the chip seal will look like, and it will look like a historic rustic road. This is work that you see in numerous locations. Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. You were over on the side. So what it is, it's a lot of communities around here use the chip seal like this in order to keep their roads looking rustic on the top, but it allows us to secure the base, therefore extending the life of the road. So we don't end up in what's called full depth reclamation, which if you end up having to dig down and reset your bases and everything, the cost is substantially more. So this is a way to protect the roads that we have, including putting a rustic finish on the top. As you know, we went to town meeting. We've already contracted to have this work done. The work's actually scheduled to begin on Monday. So I'll be putting out a code red to the town. This includes many streets throughout the community. And then we would come in probably a few months afterwards and then put the chip seal over the roads that are more of our old fashioned rustic roads. So that is the plan that we have. That's the plan that's in process right now. And it gains life out of the roads. And I think that Hugh's done an excellent job on identifying the fixes that are necessary. Chuck?
May I respond, please? I have no problem with the chip seal. I wish you'd put, and that's what's been done by Clint for the last 30 years, but why put asphalt down and then chip seal on top of it? The road base is fine. Just, may I finish?
The road base, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The road base is there is fine. There are sections, and his pictures show them, where they're through swampy areas, where they freeze thaw. You're not gonna fix that. I'm talking about Old Meeting House and Field Road. There's no reason, especially that historic section in front of the old Meeting House, Laurel Hill land. There's no reason to put asphalt and then chip seal on top of it. Forget the asphalt, just put the chip seal down on what's there. You're not gonna help anything. The asphalt's gonna change the character of the road. I don't care, put chip seal down on top of it. Why put the asphalt down first? It's not environmental.
The asphalt.
It's not gonna help the maintenance. I've talked to Clint.
Yes,
He's come in here and vouch for me. He took care of these roads for 40 years.
The ability to put chip seal down at this point is long gone. Chip seal is like a product seal or a micro seal. It's a tool for maintenance. You're past maintenance.
In certain sections, I'll grant you that, Hugh. There are certain sections along Barry Walk and Bean Hill.
You guys already said both of this. My question for you is, does it make sense to do asphalt in one section and not asphalt in another section? Isn't that going to look even worse? I mean, you're saying you got to you're going to have to asphalt part of the road. I mean, I think if it just looks like I don't know, I'm asking.
The whole thing with the asphalt, they'll come in, they'll shim it, so they'll fill some of the undulations.
What does that word mean, shim?
They're gonna
Levels.
Then they'll come back probably at 0.05, 0.07 tack coat. Then they'll put 1.5 inches top coat. Then it'll set, and then they'll chip seal. You'll end up with the same looking road you have now. Rideability, maintenance, everything else is increased.
And lifelong.
You can chip seal in layers. You can do different size stones in different layers, but that's called functional obsolescence. You're past that. You're spending more money to have a worse base road.
Well, I'd love to, if we disagreed, the recommendation of us and your current highway superintendent, and I support his, is that we recommend that we continue with what's been proposed.
I agree, some of the roads need it, but not Old Meeting House and not Field. Those are the ones I speak for.
Yeah.
They're historic roads and asphalt. Put the chip seal down on what's there if you want.
But he's telling us that won't work.
I've been in the business for over 50 years and I've done a lot of chip sealing, a lot of paving. And
I rest
the
my
best,
case.
the best,
I ask the board to exempt.
for my professional
Old meeting house.
opinion, paving and then doing this chip seal gives you the same look with a lot stronger road. And our job is to make sure that all the roads in town are safe and passable for all the residents, all the visitors, all the tourists, everybody that comes through, not just the neighborhood. Our job is to do the whole town. And with my years of experience and US recommendation stuff, I would highly just stay with the paving and the chip sealing.
Well, thanks to cap on that, this is also the recommendation of the person that applied what's there. So this is, he's saying, for now, you can shim it and top it and re-chip it. So.
And the original plan wasn't to chip seal it. We added the chip seal as a way to maintain I'm not done.
Is that true?
We added the chip seal as a way to maintain the rustic feel of the road. You know, after it was pointed out to us that it might change with just the asphalt. So, you know, this is a last minute change that I think it's kind of nice at least to try to respond to the neighbors' concerns that it might be changing the neighborhood character. This is a last minute change. I mean, this is a contracted, you know, initiative. It's out, it's not just out to bid. The bid has been awarded and it's scheduled for Monday. And this is a relatively recent last week or two that this came up, that we added the chip seal option to maintain the historic character. But, you know, this is scheduled, so.
Well, I thank you all for listening. I think time will tell what these roads look like as time goes on. And I feel passionate about this because I grew up in a town in New Jersey, which when I lived there in the 50s looked a lot like Stockbridge. I'd like Stockbridge to stay the way it is. I go back to that town I grew up in, and roads I used to play on and ride my bicycle on are now unsafe. And I see Stockbridge moving in that direction, and paving roads, I feel, is a detriment to the community. But thank you for listening. Time will prove one of us right and one of us wrong. Thank you.
I'm just, you know,
okay,
outlook is what you have. It's just, you know.
Byways, not highways.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not a negative one. You know, I have John Hart from Rattlesnake Mountain Road, which, as long as I'm walking on the face of this earth, will not be paved. However, I have known Hugh Page when he worked for Tom Farley, when he built the garage at my house. And Hugh Page is a perfectionist. He does not, Alan, he does not do what your community doesn't want. He's going to do what your community wants. And if you have a concern from that man, you go and talk to him, because you know what? He will answer your questions. And by the time you're done talking to him, you will understand why he wants to do what he wants to. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all for listening. I feel better that I presented my case.
Stockbridge Falls Stewardship Commission membership to appoint Gary Kleinerman. I'll make a motion we appoint.
Second.
Gary Kleinerman, those in favor? Aye. Flexibility study for Emerald and Amethyst Necklace Sidewalk in Lenox, Stockbridge by PRPC.
PRPC.
Are you here? Is that you or? Yeah.
Good evening. A few weeks ago, Patrick invited me to go to a meeting with one of the representatives from the Lenox Board of Selectmen on a proposal to create a connection, a sidewalk that would connect Lenox, Tanglewood, and some of the areas surrounding Tanglewood. Because as global warming has now become a word that's part of everyday lives, this issue is becoming more and more a project that looks like a project that could receive funding from national, state, and not require a lot of money locally. However, in order to do this study, there needs to be somebody in charge, somebody to look at the costs. And this is just the study on costs and implementing it, what the issues are that would have to be addressed. So in order to proceed with looking at where there could be money and what grants are available, Tom at BRPC asked Stockbridge and Lenox to present a resolution that said that you would support the study. It's not anything more than a study. I think this study is really important because it will help to reduce the congestion. And the other part of it is, and I'm a real advocate for being able to walk after my experience and being able to walk out my door and be able to walk throughout town. It's such a gift. And right now, for a lot of homes around the bowl, in Lenox, and in Stockbridge, they don't have that option, because if you want to go to the Lindy Center, you really have to have a car. And if we could look at some ways to make this part of the trail network and look at how it could tie in with the Berkshire Regional Planning Agency has just put out a website for outdoor recreation, and there are 550 sites that people can visit for outdoor recreation. And in order to enhance that, this would potentially have a real good opportunity of getting funding. So I could answer questions. A lot of it is unknown. Patrick?
I mean, this was an idea that Mary Beth Mitz of the Lenox Select Board and I started talking about a year ago. And the idea, the sidewalks along West Street are in need of significant repair. They end at the main gate. They do not connect around to any further down 183, which is a state road. And in fact, interestingly enough, when we talked to the folks at MassDOT, or Region 1, the folks for this MassDOT, actually the road classification changes at the Stockbridge and Lenox town line, which I thought was very interesting. This also came about because a number of folks have expressed concern, and not suggesting that there is a safety issue, but nevertheless a comfort issue with walking home after concerts in the White Pines area. And some folks who are of the Orthodox Jewish faith have indicated that when they're up mostly on the weekends from White Pines and they don't drive on Saturdays, it would be nice if the reality is that people sometimes go fast, and if there was a little bit of a walking path or something. There's no indication yet of what this would look like. The idea is, as you look at the walkability between Kripalu, the center of Lenox, at the top of the monument, down Old Stockbridge Road, possibly to Shakespeare and Company, back up through Lenox, up Kemble Street, and then as you go from Old Stockbridge Road, possibly down Hawthorne Street, Hawthorne Road, connecting to White Pines. That ties together Freelandheisen, the Tanglewood Institute, which is full of a whole bunch of kids. Obviously, 400,000 people who visit Tanglewood every year. And then all these wonderful trails at the end of that in the Stockbridge Bowl, that there might be an idea to improve biking and walking trails and envision something that possibly could be done with state or federal dollars. The RPC's offered to help. They just want permission from the two boards to take a look at that. And all 5 signatures of the Lenox Select Board are on their sheet. They talked about it this past Monday.
And who pays for the feasibility study?
That would be what BRPC would look into.
Yeah.
At this point, there is no expenditure of funding from either of the towns. But BRPC has a lot of resources for grants and funding, particularly all the money that's now coming down to address the issues with the climate change and meeting the 2030, 2050 net zero goals. So this would probably be something, perhaps, we can't guarantee it, but this could be something that would fit into one of those feasibility studies. So it wouldn't be, at this point, we're asking BRPC to do the work and there would be no cost to the town. It would just be part of, you pay an assessment to BRPC and it would be part of the work that they do for towns as part of your assessment.
You paid that already?
Yeah, we paid it.
Okay.
It's not that much.
No, I just didn't.
It's like a couple of $1,000. I mean, it's very inexpensive because PRPC does a lot of work with getting grants for programs.
So I did talk to Tom and you know, Division One or MassDOT folks, and they thought that, you know, just based on kind of how central this is to, you know, that this could be something that they could advocate for, and I think that you know, we're years away from actually taking any action on this just because of all of the planning process that we go into something like this. But, you know, I think having you know, more
I mean, as long
plan that goes with it.
as long as it's not costing us any money, I have no objection to it.
It is a,
Like that attitude.
it is a tremendous amount of asphalt to put down. You're talking about.
We're not
It could be walking trails.
Right, but I mean,
Or like proposed trails, you know, those are not paved. You know, they're basically, yeah.
There could be a lot of just trail.
Kate has a question.
Okay.
And there's some people on the screen. Dude.
I'm Kate Fletcher. I live on Hawthorne Street. And I guess my comment is that fortunately, I saw the agenda and I had no idea what emerald, amethyst, ruby, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I guess it's a sidewalk. It sure would have been nice to, fortunately, I called Mike and he's explained, yes, this is, you know, Hawthorne Street is in the mix here. So I just wanted to make the comment that I've lived on Hawthorne Street for 30 years. And, you know, we're talking about roads tonight and rural character. And I too prefer the rural character and in particular, you know, where I live, I value that rural character and I like the road as it is. I guess I prefer the trees. So my personal opinion is that sidewalks are I see Lennox putting in a lot of sidewalks, you know, these long straight things, and I rarely see people walking on them. To me, they have sort of I find sidewalks to be kind of deadening often. So I wonder about, you know, the expense relative to the value. And then, you know, I would also just comment then that that area is a major wildlife corridor. So there's, you know, now you're increasing the fragmentation that you get, you know, with roadways to wildlife, you know, by expanding that what is known, you know, despite the emerald ruby name in the environmental world, this is known as gray infrastructure, sidewalks, asphalt, concrete, whatever it is. So that's not something that I would, you know, welcome certainly. And, you know, I hope, you know, it would have, I guess this has been in the works for a year. It would have been awfully nice to know about it, but I'm glad to be here tonight and I'm grateful that I called Mike and that he brought me up to speed on what's going on here. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Patty?
Yeah, I was really interested when I saw this in the proposal and I mapped it. I mapped what was listed in the document, the Lennox Select Board document, to see what it looked like on the map. And I was curious, the woman who just spoke, when the BRPC studies it, are they limiting it to the specificity of what's listed in the Lennox Select Board document, or will they consider other options or even expansions or Like I noticed that it would have been an easy jog to make it go to the Stockbridge Town Beach. I mean, I say easy jog, but it all costs like zillions of dollars. So I was just curious if they're going to just what was in that document is all they're going to look at. And will the study, will this go as far as like looking at that, what other potential detriment? I actually love that. I kind of like the idea. I walk that Stockbridge, the Shakespeare and Company sidewalk all the time because it's walkable and safe. So it seems appealing on some level. But I was just curious if you were going to keep the specificity and if you're also going to look at, I don't understand the parameters of this study. Are you going to look to see like what potential detriment there is, like how much eminent domain they'd have to take in order to whatever's not public? I'm just curious what this study will look or feel like. What's it going to look at?
I think that there's no I talked to Tom and I talked to Region 1. Is it Region 1 or Division 1?
Region 1.
Region 1, guys at MassDOT. They just wanted an indication that this was something that was discussed in public that they could start to brainstorm and consider. There's not even a decision on whether or not it's dirt or like a bike path or or gray infrastructure or whatever. I will pass along the comments on which some folks don't seem to like Mary Beth's word amethyst. I came up with the emerald. So, I don't know which one is more obnoxious, but, you can blame the two of us. I think that this is just a way to start a conversation. And I will say that many, many folks this is in my 4 years on this board, from White Pines and from Emerson Lane and from Hawthorne Street, others on Hawthorne Street have indicated a concern around pedestrian issues around the bowl. And it isn't just limited to White Pines. You're right. It could go down to you could look at the Causeway. You could look at Mackinac Heights. You could look at certainly that stretch of Mackinac Road between, Bean Hill and the beach. My God, people, it's like, it can be a lot of speeding there. So, I think everything's on the table or nothing's on the table. And that's what a feasibility study will tell us is what we can do and where we might be able to fund it.
Are you going to include residents in that?
I think the whole process is public, Kate, which is why we're starting with, before we even authorize a feasibility study, a public meeting.
Yeah, we got to keep in mind that a feasibility study is not going to define anything. It's really just looking at possibilities. So it's going to be a real high-end look at what is even just conceptually feasible. Then they'll have to do, so anytime Mass DOT, they have to do their environmental assessments whenever they do a road, because they're currently doing that on the potential sidewalk from Pine Woods in. So, but those are well down the road. The first thing is identifying just what's feasible, what's possible, and they'll lay it out. We can ask definitely to expand such as the beach, but it's not going to answer any of the details. From there will be, okay, this is possible. And here's some potential sources. Then what we'd get into is conceptual. That's when we'd start narrowing down to what the concept actually is. But the first step is just a very broad look at what's possible.
And it could be multi-years.
Phased approach.
Putting in a section and then seeing how it works. But I think if you're at Hanglewood at night and with all the pedestrians and the cars and it's dark, it can be really frightening to find people are walking along Hawthorne Street as this group of cars is going home.
With Clarence and Kate and I have something.
Who's
Clarence?
Clarence?
No,
Candace?
Or Candace.
Candace, I can't read it. Candace?
Yes, hi, I'm Candace on Emerson Lane, and I am one of those people who walks from Tanglewood at night and love to have sidewalks. But the point of this evening is to say, my goodness, if we can have a feasibility study done and not have to pay for it, let's put that in action. I think this is a fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
It's just basic planning. It's like, first,
Kate has a question.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know, this is your project, this is your baby.
And we talked about 2 years ago, by the way, you and me.
We did not talk about this.
Yes, you said if we did sidewalks, you would be opposed to them.
You never informed me that you were working with regional planning.
I have something.
Okay.
I'm really not.
I'd like to make a comment. I'm here to make a comment and you're my representative, so I hope you listen. Okay? So my hope is that, I'll ask you, Chucky, at the appropriate time when the public will be included, that you reach out to me.
Well, we talk to everybody.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be quite a ways down the road.
Yeah.
I believe this is not gonna be an overnight thing.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not gonna be a, here it is, vote on it
Right.
thing. This is gonna be a lot of input from
I
everybody.
mean, what you see here is, you know, those of us who live on, I'm the closest to Butter. So that entrance to Tanglewood was supposed to be a minimal impact. And through a lack of oversight, it's just another main gate. And I assure you that the impacts are significant. You've got lighting, you've got heavy traffic. It's hundreds of thousands of cars a summer. And the one thing we have is the off-season. And, you know, the character of the road. You've heard other people here talking about the character of our roadways.
No, this would be,
So
this won't be an overnight, here you
Yeah,
go.
well, I
Here's the
understand that.
sidewalk.
But this
We're
really goes
talking-
in some ways to the heart of what does the town look like? Are you putting,
Oh, I'm 100%. I don't want a concrete sidewalk going all around through.
you know, sidewalks everywhere now? It's turning into New Jersey.
Yeah.
You know, to Allen's
But,
comment.
I mean, this study's not gonna cost us anything. It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And then see where it goes. But no, it will be definitely public input
Thank you.
right through from start to finish.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just want
to clarify our, the Regional Planning Commission's involvement up to this point was a conversation as to how they could potentially help or be involved. So this is just ground zero.
Okay.
Finally.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that, you know, to Kate's point and a few other people, but what troubles me again is that at the last minute, since some people knew a year ago, it's brought to us after everything's already signed and done and sort of already this idea. And it's not that I'm against a feasibility study, but again, we get it at the last minute and we're the last to know. And then it looks like we're being difficult. And anyways, I
What
just.
other process would you have liked?
Anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm not against it. I'm just don't like how the process of it's at the, you know, it feels pushed upon.
Okay, I'll make a motion. We move ahead with the, get permission to go with the study.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Okay, time tower proposal for playing of the chimes.
I have to apologize, I didn't print this out, but let me just walk you through it. So Andrea Goodman, she was here at the last meeting, it was brought up, we had discussions about the chime tower. If we want to get the chime tower playing throughout the summer, including, you know, during the week, have some play times where the chime towers would be played, you know, having different songs, different musics, mixing it up. I know she's already taken a little initiative to reach out to the neighbors and the rest to work with everybody around that. And do four 1-hour special demonstrations. The first one would be during our Memorial Day Festival. And I think it'd be a good thing. And then she needs to transcribe some of the music and other stuff, have events where kids can learn how to play, things like that. Has put a proposal together of $6,500 for the entire season. She would coordinate everything, run the entire operation. What I'm recommending is that the board accept this proposal. We run it through our undesignated compensation line for this first year. And then if it is something that's after the season, we evaluate whether or not it was successful or not. If it's successful, we put it in the annual budget to do this. If it's not successful, then it's something that we can reevaluate what we're doing. I talked to Georgia, and years ago we did, prior to COVID and other things that had happened, there was annual playing and it was paid by the town. So overall, I think it's a very good proposal, and it brings the chime tower back to life, especially after investing significant money in the chimes, which are fully playable. I know that the clock mechanism isn't working where you hear the hourly tones, but the chimes themselves were fully restored to playability and they sound great. And this would be a great use of chime tower itself. So.
Okay, so we'll be able to, as she does this, if we get some major complaints.
Yeah, we can make adjustments.
We can make adjustments on the schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion, we accept it. Any comments?
Well, I just want to disclose that I'm the one that recruited Andrea, as I'm the one that came up with many of the initiatives that are housing, including finding the donor of the land, as I'm the one who's trying to brainstorm on keeping people safe. And it just gets so tiring on every front to get attacked for working hard. But yes, I will make a second that we accept this proposal. Are we then done?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The 225 budget discussion, you're pretty much set in there, right?
The only change to the budget was I did go back after it was brought up at the last meeting about looking at the reserve account. I know at that time I said, yeah, 150 is a good amount. I did go back and look and I don't see why we couldn't go down to 100,000. I think I've expressed, I've had talks with each of you individually that as long as we accept that we could at times have to make interdepartment transfers at the end of the year. The end of last year, even the end of last year, our expenses are basically our offsets at the end of the year was close to $500,000. So we could have moved money to transfer between. So I think that we could lower that amount to 100. That's my recommendation on the budget. Other than that, I think the budget is set.
It down to 4.9.
It brings us down to 4.9 with a 4.2% increase to the average tax bill. So.
Okay, any questions on that?
This was my recommendation at the last meeting. So yes, I support it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last thing is the warrant. So you have the warrant in front of you. Nothing, I highlighted the couple things that did change in the warrant. So one is that if you remember, we had originally the radios that were brought up about the police department, and the decision was that we would hold off and do a complete evaluation of our communication systems before going out. But one of the things we did find was that Daryl had looked into the repeaters that we would be getting would work with our current radios or with the 800. So I put that back in. It's 13,500. It's number 12 of Article 9. Then the other one is the town has applied for a dredging grant of $294,000 through the inland dredging grant. And if we don't get the grant, in order to complete the work that we need to get done in 2024 to continue with dredging, we would need an additional 75,000. So right now I put Article 13 for 75,000 in for permitting for the Stockbridge Bowl dredging project. If we find out prior to town meeting that we've received the grant, then similar to what we did last year, we pulled the Swan property off, we could end up pulling this one off. But basically it would allow us to continue the work. If we get the grant, we don't need this additional funds. So I put that in there. And then the last change is Article 18. I thought I highlighted it, but I didn't. Verizon wants to extend, but also wants to renegotiate their lease. So their lease right now is coming up on a 5-year, there were 5-year terms, and then they can possibly be renegotiated or they can step out of the lease, whatever, for the cell tower. So what they proposed is a new 5-year initial one and then 7 5-year ones. What I put in here is just an article that authorizes the selectmen to negotiate with Verizon on a new lease. Because anytime you go anything greater than 3 years, the selectmen can't enter into any agreements greater than 3 years without town meeting approval. So this just allows negotiation of a new lease with Verizon for our cell tower. So I ran it past legal counsel and it's something we should consider. So the details of that will be in the negotiations, but right now it just authorizes you guys to negotiate.
Figure out the down poll between them and Spectrum yet? Is that done?
No, I'm still dealing with that.
All right, so how about we condition this that Verizon fixes the pole?
Okay. Oh, Verizon's out. Verizon is definitely not on those poles.
We could still make,
It's
we could still
National-
blame them and
it's
make them
National
fix
Grid or
it.
Spectrum on that broken pole. you're referring to.
So everybody in favor of the,
You can approve if you're all still.
Motion to approve the warrant.
second, those in favor?
All right.
All right.
Okay.
I'll clean copy of this to sign, for the board to stop in and sign.
Okay,
Good.
All right.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zoom people.